When did it strike you that I'm going to attempt the toughest exam in India at that point of time?
Assam was going through this huge movement every day.
What our Prime Minister is doing right now is tell the rest of India that there is a place called Northeast, which is oftentimes really ignored.
I was moved to a district where there's a place hundreds of people had been killed.
So you were obviously on the hit list.
Hum hai na OG, na khaki, hum hai NSG.
Welcome to Journey of Leaders. I'm your host, Captain Raghu Raman. In each episode of this series, I sit down with leaders who have walked their own hard journeys to extract not just lessons, but first principles of leadership that are agnostic of any domain or industry. These are foundational principles that can be learned and applied in virtually every walk of your life, be it professional or personal. Think of it as a tribe of mentors whose hard-earned experience is being shared in this platform. My guest today is someone who has spent a lifetime safeguarding India from the front lines of intelligence, counter-terrorism, and national security. Jayanto Narayan Choudhury is the former Director General of the NSG and former Chief of Assam Police with over 3 decades of distinguished service in the IPS. He has served over 25 years in the Intelligence Bureau across Northeast and West Bengal. He's represented India at the embassy in Washington, D.C. and later led the National Security Guard, operating at the highest levels of national security. Post-retirement, he has held key oversight roles with the National Human Rights Commission, served on the board of GAIL, and contributed to regional policy and several philanthropic initiatives. My name is Captain Raghu Raman. Stay with us as we explore the first principles of leadership, public service, and the mindset required for decision making at the highest levels of national leadership.
So I'll just begin, sir.
Absolutely.
And as is the norm in our conversation, we begin from the origin story. Okay. So where were you born? Your father, I know, was in the forces. Yes. And what was your early days like? That's where we begin. So where were you born?
I was born in Lucknow, now it's the Command Hospital.
Oh, okay.
It's at that time it used to be an MH. But that's the only connection I have with Lucknow. After that, my father went to, at that time, Naga Hills, Kohima, and then he was in Calcutta. And after Calcutta, he sent us to boarding school. I was a little over 4 at that time, 4 years and 2 months, I think. I went to Mount Herman, Darjeeling.
And you were there for?
For 3.5 years.
3.5 years.
Then when he got a posting to Shillong, we went with him. And then in the army, you had this great thing of separated family quarters.
SF.
So while he went all over the place, we stayed in Shillong till 66 end. And 67, I first came to Columbus when we came here.
Oh, Delhi.
St. Columbus. But we were staying in Dholakwa. And in those days, buses were few and far between. And I used to want to go for sports. So Dholakwa bus stand mein khade, he said, do you want to go to boarding? I said, if you can send me, I wouldn't mind.
How old were you?
12 years old.
12 years old.
And then, of course, Mayo itself was outstanding. It was it gave you opportunities that, you wouldn't have outside in those days.
And you said you were interested in sports. Where did that come from? I mean, was it something?
No, in the army, everybody's fit. So, and because my father was in the ASC, from a young age, we had horses.
Yeah, of course.
We could
For those who don't know, ASC ASC and the cavalry own the horses when it comes to...
Days, yes. Yeah. And of course, a little gun artillery also has some. But we had opportunities always to kind of be involved in sports. And in Mayo, fitness was very much a part of our life. Yes, part of the... Yeah.
Mayo was also very military-like, actually, in their discipline.
A lot of 4G kids used to come.
Are there.
But you're right, it was a lot of discipline. And that's, I think, when you build up your resilience, physical and mental. And you had to box. Whether you like
it, I know. Like we have in the academy.
Absolutely.
Again.
And you had like NDA, you have a 5 meter high diving board. You have to jump from those boards. So and you had cross-country running.
These rituals, which actually are almost like a physical resilience trauma, I believe they also have something to build character. When you know how to take a punch, give and take, and more importantly take, because giving, you can always give to a person weaker than you. but the ability to take a punch, fall down, and then get up again, or the ability to conquer a fear that is a part of your narrative as a child, whether it's a fear of water, fear of heights, or whatever. Do you also believe that some conquering of a physical fear actually has a correlation to some character building?
You've said the absolutely the right thing. For example, in the even in the IPS, there's always been this big debate about riding. It's not just a sport.
Yeah.
It's number one, mastering your fear. Number one, with another being. Learning to be
coordinate
in coordination with. So it's really important. And I think as you're talking about boxing, you learn that even if you're knocked down, you get up.
You get up, yeah.
You get up. Right? You fight on, and you fight within the rules. So I think I really look back on my experience in Mayo with gratitude.
So you finish Mayo, and then what happens?
No, my father died. He was not even 41. And my mother was 39. You had this brood of children to look after. And
if I may ask, how did your father die?
in an accident, road accident.
He had a road accident. How old were you then?
I was 16.
And you were the eldest?
No, my sister was 18. I was 16 and I had a younger brother who was at that time 9. So there were 3 of us. And the first pension slip was 129 rupees because it was a provisional pension. And then, of course, later on the pension came in. And you have this Director General of Resettlement.
Yes, DGR.
So they gave her a cooking gas agency in Assam. So there we went. It's interesting. One of the reasons I joined service is because she needed a no objection certificate from the Deputy Commissioner. And poor thing, we had no clue. In the army, you have no clue how the civil service works. Every day she would try to get an appointment. And every day the Raman was in Assamese, he would say, no elder sister, Baido. He's too busy today. And 1 week went, 10 days went, and she was at her wit's end. And then there was a local army unit who somehow managed to give her the number of the Deputy Commissioner. I remember his name was Agnihotri. And she managed to call him up, and she was desperate. She says, Mr. Agnihotri, I don't know what to do. I need this certificate, and every day they're saying you're too busy. So he said, Madam, please come tomorrow at 11. And we went, and 2 minutes later, he signed.
You also went?
I was there. We used to sit on a bench outside his office. I was 17 or 18. We used to be sitting on a bench outside his office, and every day we couldn't go in. There was no one else. And the poor Darwan, he told my mother, why did you have to go up? All I wanted was 5 rupees for for Tamil Pan, that is for Supari. We didn't know you had to give 5 rupees.
It was prevalent even then.
5 rupees, just a small amount of money.
Those days.
But we didn't know.
Yeah.
I mean, if we had known, we'd be happily given it. But we didn't know that was the dastur, to put it that way. So these are the small things.
But I just want to go back, sir, once, because this is an important moment in your life. So when did you hear that your father died? How did you come to know?
I had finished my ISC, Indian School Certificate, class 11. I had just come home.
On leave?
On leave. At that time, there was a blackout. And the
blackout because of
the
71
war.
Okay. Yeah. So which month is this?
December.
Yeah.
So then there was a blackout, and he, unfortunately, he died. But I can't tell you how his course mates, they all came. Everybody came. And they stood by us. And I can't forget those.
I think that's one of the most important elements of what we call uniformed services. Where if
the bonding,
one goes down.
Absolutely, and it's they are more of a family in many ways.
Yeah. So 16, this happens. Yeah. Why Assam? Because that's where you got allotment.
My father was Assamese.
Oh, he was Assamese.
My mother was a Bengali.
Okay.
In fact, when my father was posted in Fort William, he used to go and watch the football match. My mother used to also watch football match. And that's actually where they met.
Oh, okay. That's interesting. So your mother was interested in sports?
Yeah, football.
Football.
In those days, how Bengal.
Oh, yeah, Bengal is,
absolutely.
It was very big.
Passionate about Mohan Bagan.
Mohan Bagan. No.
Yeah.
So that's why you decided Assam, or it was decided for you?
Yeah.
The gas agency.
We had property at that time, a lot of property in Assam. So my mother felt she had to be there. In those days, it was only land that you have to look after. So we went there, and that's how we started the next chapter of our life.
So when did it strike you that I'm going to attempt what is arguably the toughest exam in India at that point of time, or even is today?
My mother's grandfather, my great-grandfather, he was killed in an encounter. He was police in
1904.
1904.
Okay.
And her father, my grandfather, he has served with the police in Ecohut, Bannu, Peshawar, before he moved to Odisha, Bihar province. And my father was in the army, so I always knew that I wanted to serve. And when I was in Delhi School of Economics, I used to hear people talking about this and that. So it just became something which, my mother was very clear, she didn't want me to look after the family problem.
So from Mayo you came to DC?
Sri Ram.
Sri Ram College.
Sri Ram College of Commerce for 3 years. And then I joined but there, those 3 years, I was most of the time running up and down from Assam and back,
Helping.
trying to help my mother.
So in Sri Ram College you decide to appear for the civil services?
No, then I joined the Delhi School of Economics.
Delhi School. So but you decided to give it. But were you the only one or you had friends?
Most wrote the exam a year later. But from my year, there was one who joined the IAS, Ratan Vatal, and there was one who joined the Foreign Service, who's no more, Ashok Tomar. So there were just 3 of us from our class in the Delhi School of Economics who joined in 1978.
Yeah, but I want to hear the whole story of preparation and why IPS.
No, for me, it was actually, I thought I'd practice. I'd do the practice.
Oh, it was not even a serious attempt?
No. And next year I'd do it properly.
Give it properly.
People would join a coaching center, do something or the other, and this. So I had taken what they call little booklets from the School of Correspondence.
Correct.
And I didn't even take economics. I did mercantile law and I did British history and I think something else. So I studied from those little booklets that they have.
Pamphlets.
Kunji,
whatever you call it.
Maybe that's what helped me because I didn't know too much.
You just had enough.
Enough.
How many months would you say you studied?
No, I finished the last paper for my master's was end of May.
Okay.
And these exams started from July, so I had 1.5 months.
1.5 months. And do you think that's enough time if you put your mind to it?
I don't think so. I mean, I think you need a little more preparation, especially today when you have preliminaries and then you have the mains papers and everything else. You do need more time and it should be more systematic.
More systematic. So anyway, so you get this call letter which comes that you have been selected.
Oh. If I may tell you, I did the interview. Then my mother wanted a vehicle. So through my father's friends, we got an army disposal jeep. A lot of jeeps had been captured from 1971.
Correct, 71.
So we got an American village jeep. And I put a Perkins, I came to Delhi. I fixed a Perkins engine, P4 engine, on the jeep. And I drove to Tinsukia.
Oh,
nice. With a convoy, I drove. Now I was very tired. In Guwahati, I was leaving at 4:35 in the morning, and who slammed into me? A police jeep.
Oh.
Police jeep slams into me, and I'm taken to the police station. And asking me, they said...
You're a student at this time?
No, I'd completed my master. I'd written the IAS exam.
You written the exam, okay.
So the OC, because officer in charge, what you call as
SHO
station officer, yeah. He said, your name is Jayanto Choudhury? I said, yes. He said, you made the IPS. I said, what?
So he is the guy who tells you?
He tells me. Then he takes me to the SSP, who was Mr. DNS Srivastav, and he said, he just joined the IPS. I didn't know what to say. Because as I said, it was a practice attempt for me. I didn't even know.
But wasn't there an interview after that? You just
no, everything was over.
Oh, it's over. Okay.
So, because I think they would go through it and see how many people.
Oh, they would definitely. Assam Cadre mein kitne aaye, kaun aa raha hai?
So it was interesting.
So why IPS then?
No, I said my great grandfather from the maternal side, he was a police officer who died in 1904 in an encounter. My grandfather was also maternal grandfather was also in the IP, and on my father's side, in fact, in 1870, the police had just been set up in Dibrugarh. He joined as a constable.
Oh, okay.
And after 5-6 years, then he went into business and he became a Rai Bahadur and all that. But initials was in the police.
In the police.
So I must say, lineage-wise, I have all the lineage you can ask for.
So what's your first posting? Firstly, I mean, normally I've heard that they don't necessarily give Assam cadre to people from Assam.
In our time, you have to give an option, home state cadre or other.
Okay.
If you give home state and you were in the seniority, you got the home state.
Oh, you got the home state.
And if you were not, then you were not part of a roster.
So you got your home state.
I got my home state.
No, first you go to LBS, no sir?
Yes.
You go
4
to
months, that's fantastic time.
Lal Bahadur Shastri Academy,
Academy,
that's what the IAS, IFS and
we had 400, all the services.
all the services. Okay, they
We
go
had
there.
about 400. That was a small batch. Normally you have about 1,000, but we had about 350 or 400. And it is the best introduction you can get to government.
What happens in those 4
Paid
months?
holiday.
Okay. I got to say that, sir.
In the sense that you're introduced to government, they teach you constitutional law, they teach you, and you learn about what government is all about. So it's a wonderful, and there you go on a hike. We went to Har Ki Doon over Jamnotri. You go on a village visit. So it's a wonderful experience. I mean, and you really think that this is what life is all about.
4 months. You spend those 4
yeah.
months there.
Then you go to Nagpur,
Okay.
for Civil Defence College for a very short while. And from there you go to
Hyderabad.
Sardar Vallabhbhai Patel National Police Academy. And there you spend almost a year.
It's a year-long training.
Yeah.
So what happens in that training? That 12
Well,
months?
it's a balance between between physical training and things like, weapons, martial arts, and then of course even riding is compulsory.
Compulsory.
Equitation is compulsory. And then you have, of course, law, and you have subjects related to your police work. Then you go on a Bharat Darshan, and you go on village visits. So the whole thing is to prepare you, in some ways, generally, for what's going to be your
remit.
role. Yeah.
Your remit. So after your training, do you get a choice that which location you're going to get, or no, you're not? They just
You don't get a choice. You go. So you come to Assam. Then Assam, in the police training college, you spend 3 months. You learn the local laws.
And this is which year when you're sort of entering service?
This is end of 79.
End of 79.
So yeah, you finish your NPA 79. Then by the end of 79, you move to Assam. And by early 80, you go for your district training.
Okay. So you finish Mussoorie, you go to Hyderabad. After Hyderabad, Assam Police Training
Yergaon,
School.
yes.
And now this is the
District
fourth
training.
leg of the training. So you almost 2 years.
It's almost 1.5 to 2 years. Yes.
2 years. So, and what happens in that district leg?
In the district training, you see how the SP's office functions, the different branches, the crime branch, the special branch, and so on. And then you are sent for between 1 month and 3 months. You're notionally in charge of a police station.
Okay.
So and then you have to work in the circle inspector's office. And once that is done, then you're given a posting as a sub-divisional police officer.
And this duration is about 3 months, you said?
In the police station.
Yes.
In the district police station, maybe a little more.
And what is your, what's the role? What do you do in that?
You're supposed to shadow the SP if he's willing. Sometimes they're too busy and they don't have the time for you. They give you to a DYSP, which is also all right. So and that was the time, you must remember, Assam was going through this huge movement.
Agitation.
So every day we were facing these massive protests. So it was not a normal training that one would have had.
Training on fire,
you were
under
deployed
fire.
on the ground. You're deployed on the ground, and not crime. You're just dealing, and middle class people. I used to see my own relatives among the protesters, because there was this huge upsurge of protests against the what they call foreigners movement.
I want to come to a little bit of history of that. So just so that people understand, we keep hearing about the Assam problem, and I have a little bit of familiarity thanks to Coastmates who were in the Northeast. But what was the root of the problem? What happened?
Well, the British brought in migrants from East Bengal because their objective was revenue. Assam had a lot of land, but not enough revenue. And these migrants from East Bengal, they had this ability to work under very hard conditions. So gradually from 1901, they started coming in, and Mullen, who was the census commissioner, in 1931, he made this famous statement that this is an invasion. Because they were coming in large amounts, because they're hard workers. They're very hard workers. So in 1979, I'll come to 1979 now, when the electoral rolls were being reviewed in a place called Mangalday, Darang district, they suddenly found that all the names were
East Bengali.
non-Assamese, East Bengali. That was a trigger, and the All Assam Students Union.
But by this time it's Bangladesh. 79 is Bangladesh.
79 is Bangladesh, yes. 79 is Bangladesh. But again, even during the liberation, a lot of people did come and many didn't go back.
Didn't go back, yeah.
Including Hindus. Not only Muslim, but even Hindus. So then the Assamese, Brahmaputra Valley, not the Barak Valley, not Silchar, it's basically, and not the hills, Brahmaputra Valley. They came out, you can't imagine the kind of response that there was. Hundreds of thousands of people joined this agitation. It was a very, very difficult time when, as part of the government, as part of the police, you're confronting
Your own
these masses of people. You're carrying out government policy, which everybody is opposing. At that time, the government of India was driving the president's rule on and off. So they were driving the policy. So it was a very difficult time.
So I just want to probe deeper into it. So your first day or your first tough day, let's talk about it, not but your first tough day. At what age, 23, 24, you're facing something which no training can prepare you for. Right. So let's talk about that.
I'll share two incidents. One, I was an ASP, we call it Assistant Superintendent of Police under training, and information, these Assamese villagers came and said that the migrants had killed 10 or 11 of them on some islands in the Brahmaputra. We call them Saporis.
Okay. So not the Majoli.
No, Majoli is the biggest island. These small islands. They used to normally take their cattle to graze there and so on. And it was more about economics, not so much, not communal. Not communal. It was, fight over grazing, grazing and cattle and so on. So the SP, he ordered me and the assistant commissioner to take a company of CRP and had to go. So we went at night. They gave us these big boats and we went off. We didn't know where we were going. We had no maps. And finally, after meandering through the Brahmaputra, at night, we end up in the morning and the immigrants were lining up both sides of the bank, with whatever weapons they had.
But they were organized.
They socially they're better organized. The masjid is
the
center,
diaspora,
and they have the mattabor. We call there's a headman, and he's like almost like a little king in that island Sapori. But fortunately he saw reason, and then I realized that we had crossed the Brahmaputra, and the district on the other side, Ding, in Nagaon, it would have been much simpler to just go around and come from there. So I learned the importance of terrain. You have to know the terrain. You just don't rush in when it's not, when there's a problem. That's one lesson I learned. The second lesson was there used to be a border roads organization, and I think it was a central school or an army school, and the agitation people had called a bandh.
Okay.
Nothing must move. So the army being the army, they said our buses have to move. So you had tens of thousands of people just sitting and blocking the road, and we were told, the police, you have to clear them. So I was given a platoon of CRP, and we used tear gas, lathi charge.
So is this your first independent operation, or
I'm still under training.
Under training. So you're understudy.
Assistant Supi.
Okay.
Assistant Superintendent of Police under training. So we used to fire, and the crowd would go back.
And then come back again.
And then come back again. And they continued till 1 o'clock when school is over. And then they just happily dispersed. And then I realized you have to be clear about your objective. You have to be clear about your objective and understand when to apply force and when not to apply. So these are the small incidents of learning, and that is why I think this district attachment is so important if you have a good SP.
But did this turn like unsavory? Did it turn violent to a point where there was actually loss of life, or the situation could have become very ugly?
It could have become ugly if we had opened fire. It could have become ugly, because the CRP, we were getting stoned also. We were getting stoned. I've still got some scars, and the CRP were getting more and more worked
agitated.
Up. Bataiye, jana hai. And I was trying to calm them down. I said, relax. You know, I was saying, relax. So that's when your boxing experience
Things
comes
comes in.
it
Yeah,
comes
yeah,
in.
yeah.
That you realize you can take a few knocks and yet not lose it.
So after this stint, what's your next?
Next, you go as an SDPO. In
Okay.
some states it's called SDOP, but in Assam it's called Sub-Divisional Police Officer.
Okay.
So I went to Bongaigaon, which is a part of, at that time, part of the district. Now it's a separate district. It was part of the district of Gwalpara.
Okay.
Yeah. So I was in SDPO. The SP used to sit in Dhubri, and there was an additional SP who used to be on the other side of the river in Gwalpara. But I was there for about 8 or 9 months.
So 8-9 months there, and then after
Then
that,
I was brought in as an additional SP. Then also I took over from an officer who told me very clearly that I don't want to move, so you'll be getting your transfer orders. So in 10 days I was transferred off
okay.
to a bit, which is fine for me. They posted me as the 2IC of a battalion. There again for a few months.
This battalion as an armed constable?
Armed police battalion.
Okay.
Armed police. Then from there I was brought again after a few months. Remember, till you become an SP, these are all almost like training assignments. Yeah. I came as additional SP, Guwahati City.
Okay.
In those days, there was one SP Kamrup, which today has several districts.
Okay.
And I was the one who used to look after the city, Guwahati City. So that was a crazy time because you never got to sleep before 2:33 in the morning. And unfortunately, I was a bachelor, so I had no issues about giving all my time to it. But that also is a great learning. So I was there, and at that time there was this whole thing about whether the Assam Police will side with the people in the agitation or not. So a lot of the troublemakers were brought in. I don't know if you have that in the army. They were brought in for this commando training.
Yeah.
Which essentially means that you
Pumping them up.
you give them a lot of rough time. So there were these people in the army, you'd call it mutiny, but they decided enough is enough, and they came out in a large group in a procession. I was supervising a case. There was a theft from an armory in Dispur. So I was sitting and supervising the case when the commandant came running in, and he said, "This has happened." So I immediately, your knife, I immediately rushed there, and I stopped, and I tried to tell them, Roko. They walked over me. One moment I was standing on a rickshaw and talking, and a moment I was looking at their boots marching all over me. But then I got up, I brushed myself off, and then before they were marching to the DGP's residence. We blocked them off, and we got them into the buses, and then we sent them off. But the interesting thing is, I was sent to command the battalion from where most of the troublemakers came. So the same people who walked over you, now you're sitting with them and you're asking them. And then I realized, and they were very rough with me. In the first meeting, they said, all of you are thieves. You know, all
your seniors are thieves.
And then I realized the essence, what the issue was. And once I realized that, and I tried to remedy that, many of them were dismissed under 311 2B of the Constitution. But I didn't have a problem. So I stayed there for not very long as a commandant of the battalion. Then I moved to my district. That was after the 83 elections, when I was moved to a district where there was a place, hundreds of people had been killed.
Which was
hundreds. Arne Sapori.
Okay.
It's beyond Silapatra, Likabali. These were Hindu Bengalis, not Muslims. Hindu Bengalis. And before I took charge, I was first told to go and take charge of the area. So I had a good friend in the IS who was additional deputy commissioner, my batchmate. He'd been educated in the US. So in his American accent, he says, hang on. What are you going to go there and do? So he got me a helicopter from Oil India. And I went over.
Recce.
And the bodies were like firewood, you know.
This was what is a clash that had taken place?
The local tribals who thought their land had been taken over, they came and they killed the people. Most of the people killed were old people, women or children.
Who couldn't run away.
Yeah. So the bodies were like firewood all over. You're going from the helicopter and you see these bodies all over, hundreds now, not talking about 5, 10, 15. See hundreds of bodies. Total, I think, count was almost 900. Bodies just lying around. So then I come back and with this help of my dear friend, I dictate a message to police headquarters saying, this is what I have seen. Now, this is what I want to do. I gave a plan. For this, I need this much force. And this is the authority I need. Bang comes a reply back. You're posted as SP of the district.
So there you go.
So I was
Be careful what you wish for.
I had not wished for it. So then this is in 83. I'm posted. I am now 28 years old, and I'm posted as SP of the Lakhimpur district, which had a population at that time I think of 21 or 22 lakhs. And 45 companies of the CRPF had come. Central Armed Police Forces had come for this election.
So company roughly would be about?
A company normally 120 years, but actual strength would be 80 or 90. Yeah. So you had this huge force, and your own force is about at that time 1,500 or 2,000 people spread across armed police, civil police, and everybody else. So you go there and it's chaos. I mean, nobody, because this was one incident I've told you with things that happened all
over the place.
Yeah. So those 2 years were actually very challenging years, but I think in some ways very fulfilling years, because that is when a lot of the youngsters decided that this is not going to work. Protest is not going to work. And they went off to Burma, Myanmar, and then they trained. And that's how the
ULFA began. So this, you are an SP of this region for how long?
Exactly 2 years. 2 years and 1 day.
1 day. and you believe that in your tenure there, this kind of, at least you were able to quell the disturbances to a certain...
after the elections, a lot of the angst died down. Then you had another. The problem was these young boys, suddenly, they started killing senior politicians. They started killing senior administrative officers. So in the first 3 months, I had about 12 of these killings of senior officials, not IAS and IPS and all that, but just at one level low.
Below. So they were striking the establishment.
They were striking the establishment. And I remember the chief minister, he came and in a public meeting, he said, you should be a professor. You should not be an SP. Mr. Gill was with him. He was IGP Law and Order at that time. And Mr. Raman was my DIG. And he wanted us to take a very
assertive,
hard. He wanted, I'm using hard actions. And I must be grateful. Mr. Gill said, Jayanto, you have to solve the problem. Use whatever methods you think is right. It took me time, but I identified there were 3 gangs operating. I identified the gangs, and by the time I left, I got almost all of them. 1 or 2 I didn't, who went and joined the ULFA.
I just want to talk a little bit about the ULFA, sir, because a lot of people have heard this but really don't know the origin, so that people understand what this movement was about, where is it at. It had it's one of the longest running, and despite accords, we've had it going up and down, and generally the perception of a lot of people, and I think what our Prime Minister is doing right now should have been done decades ago, which is to tell the rest of India that there is a place called Northeast, which is oftentimes really ignored.
As I said, the ULFA were young, very idealistic boys, maybe wrong ideals, but they actually felt that Assam had only been exploited. The oil had been taken, they had not been given the right royalty. Tea was grown in Assam but was marketed in Calcutta and London. Head offices were all over there. So they just felt that what are we getting for what has been taken for us? Instead, what you do is you bring in migrants from all over the place, and where are we going to go? So these young boys, and when you're young, you don't think too much. You act.
Ready, fire, aim.
Ready, fire, aim. So this is what they did. And of course, I have to admit that sometimes it was unnecessarily harsh actions by
police.
By the police and others that was
spurred
a
them.
tipping point.
Happened in Punjab also. We've seen that in Punjab.
You always feel that I can bring them in line.
Subjugate them.
And sometimes it works, and sometimes it doesn't.
So from a very early stage, you had realized the importance of intelligence when you're dealing with human beings, because it's not like, it's not just force versus force. There are 10, so we'll take 30. It's knowing who are those 10 and what is their temperament. And when did you sort of start getting interested in that space of intelligence?
Frankly, so far as formal intelligence agencies are concerned, we didn't know very much about them. Nowadays, of course, they go to the NPA and they kind of train them. I didn't know. The IB officer used to come and meet my intelligence person. I didn't even know who he was. It's your own intelligence that you work out. And I'd read some of the books on counterinsurgency and so on. But beyond that, I had no real clue. Why I joined the IB was, Arunachal was a neighboring state.
Mm-hmm.
Mr. Rajeshwar, a former police officer, was the lieutenant governor at that time. And I think his son was getting married. And Mr. M.K. Narayanan had come as
Yes,
a
of course.
guest.
Mm.
And as a neighboring SP, you give some
courtesy.
help. So he had invited me. And then Mr. Narayanan took me for a drive after. And he was asking me the names of all kinds of trees. And I didn't know a single one. So then he said, you come to join the IB. And I thought it was my lack of intelligence. I didn't know the names of any of the trees. I said, sir, why? He said, no, you come. He said, 2 years is enough. You come and see the world. So that was about March 85. And by June, I was in the IB.
You're 28 now. You're
By the time I completed 85 at 2 years, I was 30.
30.
30.
Are you still a bachelor?
I was still a bachelor. I
Okay.
married there. So it was
Okay.
it was easier. Field policing is much easier.
Yeah, of course. So 30, you are there. And so when did you get married then?
33.
33.
3
So
years
it's
later.
3 more years to go. So what's happening during these 3 years?
Then I come to IB headquarters here. And here also I'm put on a desk.
This is the old headquarters.
The old,
MHA.
no,
The-
I was sitting in what they call Darbhanga House now. I think it's Akbar Road. And I'm given a political desk. And I come to Mr. Narayan, who had brought me, and I said,
What am I
what
doing
have I
here?
come for this? He said, you stay, you learn. And there also, from the veterans, I must say, I learned how a situation is to be analyzed. How a report is to be made, how dots are to be joined. So it was I didn't realize at that time, but it was a very useful experience.
So these 3 years you were in IB headquarters.
Yes.
And which was the desk you got? You said
It was a political desk dealing with this, with at that time was supposed to be a major movement. So that was, and more important, other things. I was at that time. You have a chief security liaison officer when a foreign head of state comes. So you're attached to him. You go across the country with him. So I was with the king of Bhutan. I was with the king of Sweden. So that itself is a learning experience.
Of course.
You go to different police stations. You go to different states. You see how the police arrangements are. You interact with people at a very high level. You interact with MEA and other things.
But I've also known that many of the officers with whom I've interacted and worked with, there is a lot of study, a lot of analysis, a lot of psychology involved in that, knowing how people will behave. So it's no more about troops to task. No. It is much more about assessing a situation. And actually that joining the dot or development of the what I call the intuition algorithms, they come in these kind of environments. Yes. So in those 3 years, what were your experiences in terms of being able to spot an insight which actually gives you that confidence that my algorithms are running good?
See, you must remember this was before technology has reached the level it is now.
Of course. Yeah, it's all
so
paper.
You would get headquarters, you'd get all kinds of reports. And it is for you to make an assessment of which is credible and which requires further. So that, and sometimes as a desk, as an officer dealing with a particular desk, you have to speak to officers in the field far more senior than you and ask them, question them, that what is the credibility of this source or this report. And sometimes they would give back to you. Who are you to ask me?
Field mein dekho kya ho raha hai? Desk mein baith ke bol rahe ho mere ko. Come here and see what's happening.
Exactly. So that was the kind of thing. But it was a great. And here again, I would say, because it is the leadership is IPS, it was very simple to fit in. Because most of the senior, not all, most of the senior officers just took you under their wing. And showed you the ropes. So it was a wonderful experience.
This 3 years, was it also specializing in Northeast or was it a completely different assignment?
No, completely. It was not. It's completely different. It's completely different from the Northeast. Of course, I used to be called as
expert.
When the elections were held in Assam in '85, then I was sent to Assam because they were not comfortable with the assessment given by the field. So from that point of view, yes, but I was not handling any operations in the Northeast. And I was not looking after the analysis at all.
And then 33, you said you got married.
33, 1988, I got married.
And which football match were you at?
Unfortunately, it was not so exciting. Our families knew each other for generations.
Okay.
So, I was not getting married, and my mother was getting a little worried. She says, "Is something wrong with you?" Because being in the IPS, you get 120 proposals from royal families, from industrialists, and she says, "What's wrong with you?"
What's wrong with you?
Look, I said, "Look, I'm having a great time. I don't feel the need to get married." She says, "No." and mothers are mothers.
Yeah.
Bengali mothers are Bengali mothers.
Can't stand the son having a great time.
So the next thing I knew was there I'm getting married, but I must say sometimes mothers know best.
Best. Yeah. So you get married in
Get married,
33.
moved to go to Itanagar, and Itanagar, the main job at that time was the Sino-Indian border. As you know, since you were from the forces, around 87,
Yeah.
you had that issue in Tawang and so on. So I went then again. I was asking myself, what is our role? You have to forge over there. What are we supposed to do? And you have only one. At that time, I think Madras post, and there I saw this huge pile of helmets
Helmets.
of Indian soldiers who had died there in '62.
That's a
and had
memorial.
become no man's land. They had said never again, never again. So, and on this side, I went to Asafila, beyond Asafila, to see why do Chinese patrols come here. And once I was stuck there for 2 weeks, the Hector couldn't come and pick me up because of bad weather. So then you realize what it is on the ground.
Reality. So this is your formative years in the IB.
Yeah, formative years in the IB.
And then what happens after that?
After that, from 80, then I'm called to, should have gone to Delhi, but the joint director in Northeast, there used to be one joint director in Northeast in Shillong, who was to cover the entire area. So he said, I want him to come and work with me for a while. So I went there. I stayed there for a year and a half. Then I moved to the Kashmir group in IB headquarters.
That's which years?
92.
92.
Yes, but that was an amazing experience. And
92 is also Hazrat Bal.
Hazrat Bal, yes, took place. It was, and we had a fantastic team in IB headquarters. Mr. Dullat was my boss. He was my boss. He was again a fantastic leader also, and amazing rapport he had with
the locals.
All sides. I mean, he could ring up and connect with anybody. So that was a great experience. But then what happened was that an IB assistant director was shot dead by the Alpha. And the joint director at that time wanted to move out. He wanted to get out. He finished his tenure. He wanted to move out. So then I was asked, will you go back to Guwahati? As I was only a DD, so a JD's post, but will you go back? I said, I'll go back if you let me head the SI. So then I went back.
So how many years were you in the Kashmir group?
3 years.
3 years. That's a long time, sir. From
And normally after Kashmir, you go to Srinagar.
Yeah, of course.
But in this case, this thing happened in
So
Assam.
they pulled you back in.
So I went back to I went back to Assam.
And when you came back to Assam,
Yes.
did your mindset now change in the way you would tackle problems because of your experience of the IB?
Because of my, that was a lot of water flowed under the bridge. Kashmir group experience helped me a lot. Amazing. I realized in an operation, and you must remember, Assam was still at that time, we used to all kind of be, I was staying in...
No, there were explosions happening all the time there.
Explosions happening, even while I was there, explosions happened. But I'm talking this before, in the 90s. It was still very dangerous. And, we had to keep switching. I wouldn't take a gun.
Same
so I used
route.
to keep a weapon and keep changing cars. That's all one would keep. Change number plates, change cars, change your timings. That was a better security.
So you were obviously on the hit list as an establishment.
You become vulnerable because from where we were staying in the Khanapara IS colony, little earlier, an IS officer had been abducted.
Yes, I remember that.
Tiwari. So you had to be, you don't want to put your own organization in
at
an
risk.
embarrassing situation. So you're careful. So you do whatever you can, and at the same time you must remember your job requires you
to be out
and also to reach out. To the other side also.
Yeah. So tell me about that, sir. When you came back and how did it?
This is one. I remember I told you, Mr. Jaffa. He was he was in academy in Masuri, IAS officer. He was the course director. So when I came back, he was the chief secretary Assam. So there was a particular case where a particular, now it's of course known, the Tata Tea, they'd been in touch with the
ULFA. They're paying.
Bangkok,
it came out of the papers.
they had given
settled
non-military stores also, non-military stores. Yeah, they'd given, and they'd given medical treatment in their center in Guwahati. So Mr. Jaffa felt that was wrong, and he decided, whatever government of India, I'm the government
Taking
in Assam. So, and that time in the center, there were very weak governments. One after the other, they were changing.
Yeah.
Devagowda, this one, that one. So no one could give a clear direction. So he wouldn't accept it. So I went and I told him, I thought I had a personal rapport. I said, sir, this was done with approval, non-military stores. We had to keep a channel open. You mean to say the IB knew about it? I said, yes, probably. Then I think you should be arrested too. I don't have a heart, sir.
बुला के arrest कर रहे हो आप?
But I must say he was a very straightforward person. But those are the complexities of intelligence. You know, on one hand, your people, and sometimes people in the armed forces, armed policing, don't understand this.
Sir.
That
World is not black and
you
white.
are hammering this, but on the other side, you have to keep a channel open for talks. What is the objective?
To end the movement.
That's it.
Yeah.
Killing by itself is just an instrument.
Yeah.
Or a
And killing
means.
is not the only instrument.
And not the only instrument. So if you can achieve your objective by another way, where there's less bloodshed, why not?
So what was your tenure like? So we are at...
Which one? This
this
IB.
one. When you just
IB.
went... No, after IB you went back to Assam.
From Guwahati, I went to Washington.
Okay. What was that for, sir?
I was in the embassy. There's one post for an IB officer. So the job is called counselor. As per the idea, you liaise at that time with the FBI, with the State Department.
Which year is this, sir?
1999 to 2003. But you liaise with the State Department. You liaise with the FBI, not with the CIA. That's different. Yeah,
different entity.
So Department of Justice. So and all the local police departments. There are 18,000 police departments in the US. Huh?
18,000.
18,000.
Okay, and
Small, big.
we thought we had a lot.
And they're all semi-independent. Local policing, state policing, federal policing.
Federal policing, yeah.
So it was very, very interesting. It was a very interesting experience. And at that time, all the CBI cases and everything used to come to us. And once or twice, even I had to go appear in court in San Diego among this Khalistani movement. I had to go and appear in court. They wanted to know what the movement is all about. So, with my knowledge, I tried to explain to them. And you liaise with all the local police officers. You liaise with the foreign. Most countries have an attaché,
their own
police attaché. You liaise with them. So it's an interesting job.
So there's a question, sir, about your tenure in the NSG. Now, the reason why I'm asking this is that in the armed forces, you have time to build regimentation, so do you in the police and cadres and all that. But NSG, as some of the viewers may know, most people will not know, is a completely deputationist force where soldiers come in virtually from every part of the Indian Army and every part of the CAPF, all the police forces. And they have a very short time there.
Yes.
I think it's about 2.5, 3 years tenure now.
2 years for the officers, 3 years for the JCOs.
3 years for the JCOs and Jawans. So in 2 years' time, and उसमें वो probation भी शामिल है एक दो महीने का. So in literally 2 years' time, to forge bonds that are strong enough to actually, sort of hold their test in combat. Of course, the advantage NSG has to a certain extent is that the hit teams are small. But having said that, even a small team needs a certain number of months, years of marination before they become band of brothers, right? So how will you change your entire training philosophy, getting to know your men philosophy, and the luxury that you had कि चलो अभी नया भर्ती आया है 5-6 साल में I will come to know him. How did you operate in that short time frame where the expectation is very high? There's no doubt NSG is considered one of the elite forces of the country. So performance is undoubtedly, there's no excuse.
Yes.
I mean, if there's a counter-terror operation, then after NSG, there's really nobody in some sense. How did you get that? Or what did you see was the secret sauce of making that happen?
No, you're right. From all the 27 regiments of the army, all the combat and combat support arms, all the services of the army, and the NSG is 51% army. And all the 6 CAPFs, the only paramilitary force that you have, Assam Rifles, you have representation from all of them. Now, the question that you asked is in a 2-year deputation period for the army, 5 years for the CAPFs, how do you weld it into a cohesive whole? One is the very, very high standards. If I remember correctly, the RTU was 75% for the
75%.
army. And for the CAPFs was a little less because maybe... and the army would send their best.
So just to explain, RTU is return to unit, which means once a soldier, as Sir rightly pointed out, usually, not usually, 100% for NSG, it would be a volunteer. So which basically means that the soldier would have, at least soldier and officer, mentally been preparing for it, and after that, if you reject 75 out of 100 applicants, then indeed the standard has to be fairly high.
It's not very high.
And what is tested there? I mean, again, for the viewers, I have a fair idea, but
You see, number one, they're both physical and psychological tests, because it's not just physical, though they're very, very rigorous. They have to, run maybe 20, I think, remember 25 or 30 kilometers with the
With
full
the
pack.
backpack, yeah.
Then they test your
Firing.
firearms proficiency, and then they kind of test how you would act
under pressure.
under pressure, under stress, both as an individual and in a team. So it's very, very, it almost goes on for quite some time. I think a month or month and a half. It goes on, and then after that for them, many of them feel dejected because after that you are RTU'd or returned to unit. For them, they feel quite upset, but there's nothing you can do about it because the tests were, I don't know, must be now also, very objective. Once you get in, you have this elite group of people, and there's the ethos of the NSG. Hum hai na OG, na khaki, hum hai NSG. That is one of the former, I think, DG, who was a bit of a poet. He got this in, and that becomes the ethos. And because there was some sense in having the army separate, 51 and 52 SAGs, and you have the special weapons, and you have the SRGs. There's nothing better or worse. It's just
Different
the
tasks.
culture. The
Different
culture,
tasks.
also the culture is a little different. The leadership requirements are a little different, and that is why it was kept separate.
Yeah, I just want to unpack it for many of the viewers who'd be interested but wouldn't know the nuances of it. So the NSG has two components to it. One is called the Special Ranger Group, whose job is usually VIP protection, and it has two other detachment. One is anti-hijack hostage rescue. They are the guys who deal with interventions in flights, hostages, hijacking. And the other one is the Special Action Group, which deals with counter-terror. And of course, they switch tasks also in at least 51, 52, I remember.
They are trained. The primary role of each, but then they have a secondary role
to train. Actually, Sunil Shevron, I don't know if you remember him, sir. He, the officer who was CEO.
Yes,
Now, he was a CEO during 26/11. And he told me a very interesting thing. He told me that the SF, Special Forces, their job is to hit and destroy. And so our job is to protect. So even if a terrorist gets away, we should not allow a single collateral damage to happen. And that's what happened in Taj also. Where the firefight was raging in one corridor. The other corridor, they were evacuating people. And I don't know whether the viewers know it or not, but all the casualties that took place in 26/11 took place before the NSG took over.
Absolutely.
From the moment the NSG signed and took over the operation, there wasn't a single, the only people to die were obviously the 9 terrorists and the two our own casualties, Sandeep and Sandeep Unnikrishnan and Gajay Singh. So this is a very valuable information, and this is a very different psyche.
So both the army entrance into the NSG and the CAPF, that acculturation takes a little bit of time. From the CAPF, they also gain skills that they didn't have before. And from the army, they learn different
maneuvering,
approaching.
But that must have taught you also a lot, no, sir?
You know what? For me, since I come from a 4G background, I was in heaven.
You are, yeah, exactly. You had best of both worlds.
I love the NSG. I absolutely love the NSG. I was very happy. And as I said, the few things that the first year we called it the year of the commando. And it was not my idea. It was the idea of the force commander and others. So we just focused on increasing the
endurance,
capacity and welfare.
Okay.
Housing was in a bit of a mess and other things. So year of the commando. The second year, which I didn't complete, was year of innovation. Whether it's in tactics or training or equipment, we said, everybody, bring out your ideas, we'll help you. And at that time, the DGNSG had discretionary funds. So you do what you want to, bring out something new. And that was also, I think, quite successful.
And another nuance, I just want to sort of put it on record, which I'm sure a lot of our viewers won't know, that NSG is also the subject matter expert for bomb disposal.
Yes.
So in addition to these other
absolutely.
Functions, bomb disposal, which is another, and we actually had casualties in Pathankot of an officer who died. It's a very, very tricky job. Requires nerves which are made of something else, some other caliber of. So what happened after retirement, sir?
See, after retirement, our common friend, was with the Public Health Foundation of India.
Yes. We want to talk about that also. You should speak about that.
So
About the Indian Police
I
Foundation.
had suffered a personal tragedy, and he knew that I needed my mind to be occupied. So he asked me to join the Public Health Foundation of India. I said, public health? What's that got to do with me? He says, no, you come. And I went, and I must thank my dear friend Raghu. It's thanks to him that I had 6 really, really interesting years with the Public Health Foundation of India. There were crises that we were dealing with, firefighting all the time, but you came in touch with the best minds from another domain, and you actually saw how public health can transform this country. So it was a wonderful experience for me.
Tell us a little bit about this Public Health Foundation. What is this organization?
The Public Health Foundation of India was set up in about 2006 or 7, where it was felt that apart from the clinical health, public health deals with the health of populations, large populations. And they felt that you needed something like that in India. The British used to have it, but after that, except for some states like Tamil Nadu, public health was put onto the back burner. So in terms of research, in terms of academics, in terms of actually taking up projects, the Public Health Foundation was the one of its kind. And it reached right from Chhattisgarh to the northeast, to the states of the South India, it operated across India. And it attracted the finest minds in this domain. So working with researchers and scientists and doctors was a very different experience, but it was a fantastic, and I'm grateful to Mr. Ramachandran.
You mentioned a personal tragedy, sir. May I ask you what that was?
I lost my son. He was studying in the US, and he went hiking in Arizona, and he fell.
How old was he?
I was with the NSG. He was at that time 2015. He was 22, 23.
23.
Yes. He was completing an undergraduate degree, and I was in the NSG, and I must thank the IB and the FBI and everybody else. Even when I went there, the sheriff gave me a helicopter because it was very difficult to reach the spot, a very hard hike, which maybe he shouldn't have gone to. I went to the helicopter and I saw the place where he fell. So I am grateful to those who helped me.
How long did it take for you to get out of that, sir?
I don't think I got out of it yet.
Yet?
It shouldn't happen, but because he had a good life, he did what he liked. See, but there it goes. As a parent, you never really get over it.
After the Physical Health Foundation, you also were on a board of a couple of organizations.
I was while there. I was on the board of Gas Authority of India Limited. That was again an amazing experience, because firstly, it's a massive organization. The turnover was at that time 65,000 crores a year or some such thing, and I was initially at sea.
You know? Literally. Literally. just because GAIL has many offshore platforms also.
So basically tracking price movements of PNG across the world, how geopolitical movements could affect this, dealing with the land acquisition in states where the government wouldn't give you the land to go across. And you always think of PSUs as being very inefficient. These guys were top of the line.
No, that's
really, the GAIL people were really on the ball. So it was again I got one tenure as an independent director, and then they said you have to write some exam. I did only one exam. I didn't want to take a chance.
And what are you doing now, sir?
Now I'm on the board of certain non-profits, mainly concerned with health, and on a couple of think tanks. I was also
which think tanks are you on?
This is the Center for East and Northeast Research and Studies, mainly Fauji's, were the former chief of army staff. So I'm on the board of something called Mission Smile. They do surgery for cleft surgery.
Cleft surgeries.
Then there's Vision Spring that does screening and eyewear for the deprived. And there's Manovikas Kendra, is education and rehabilitation of children with special needs. And then a little thing I do is I'm a patron of what they call the Foundation of Culture, Art and Literature in Assam. So we just had a literature fest in
Dibrugarh. That, yeah.
150 writers, including 20 from 22 countries and all over India. So these are the little things that I enjoy doing. And I write and I read when I can.
Last question, sir. If, once again, what I asked you in the beginning, if you had one advice to give your 23-year-old self who is stepping into the world for the first time, who until then was so cavalier that one of the most important exams of the life he took, and now you give one order that could result in an innocent person getting killed and you having the blood of that person on your hands. So at the age of 23, you're coming out of the cocoon into a world where you don't know anybody, don't know anything, and anything that you do can actually have a sovereign level implication. What would your advice be if you were to meet your 23-year-old self with the benefit of this knowledge that we have now?
See, experience is something that only comes with years, but calmness you can develop. Control you can develop. So I think for anybody who has to deal with the public, calmness, control, empathy, and accessibility, this is something that should be always uppermost in your mind. It's the weakest person who comes to you, who can't, like my mother and me sitting outside the bench, not getting an appointment with the DC. That is the person you should reach out to.
Do you think that incident had a role to play in shaping you?
Maybe that's one reason I didn't join the army, because I felt I would like to do something that gives me more interface with the public.
My second last question, and this is a question only people who have lived the life can answer with authority, that many times in our life we have what we see as a tragedy at that point in time, major tragedy in some cases. And when we look in hindsight, we realize that that wasn't really a tragedy, that was the beginning of something, and unless that happened, this wouldn't have happened, right? In some way, I'm drawing a weird parallel that if you were not kept waiting outside in that bench, if you didn't see that helplessness in your mother, maybe you wouldn't have taken that career. So now in hindsight, those 3 days, 5 days of humiliation, of frustration, maybe even crying, to say at one point, when dad was there, ऐसा करो तो कोई है बोलो तो 10 लोग कूदते थे, and now we are sitting here in a bench as supplicants, and probably to an officer who wasn't even of that rank, right?
Young officer, very good.
So that's my point. So now when you look back and you say that was essential in my foundation.
No, I'm blessed in my mother because she had amazing resilience. Of course, after my father died, as I said, she did this. But while we were at there was a dacoity house during the bad Alpha years, and they took my father's medals and stamped on it and did all kinds of things. They threatened, they killed this old woman. But when I was in Shillong, I drove all night to reach her, and the first question she asked me was, "Have you eaten?"
Have you eaten?
So I think she's been a very strong influence, and it's because of her, I think I've tried to cultivate resilience. To see the world more as a stoic, that what you can do, you can do. What you can't do, you can't do. Don't worry too much about what you can't do. Worry about what you can do. Focus on that. The famous serenity prayer, right?
Yes. She's that one.
Yeah. Give me the wisdom to know what I can do.
Yeah. And what I can change, what I can't change.
Exactly.
And to live with the ones that I can't.
Yes. You've put it so well.
Anything you want to say, sir, at the end?
No, first I would like to thank you for giving me this opportunity. I was supposed to be in reserve. And I hope this thing strikes a chord with some of your viewers.
No, I'm sure it will, sir. And I just want to take 30-second, to also re-emphasize on the Indian Police Foundation, because that is the common platform that binds us all together. And that's a platform where we have several, experienced, retired, and even serving individuals, for that matter, who are a reservoir of intelligence when it comes to public handling, governance, managing big districts, turning around PSUs as in some cases, and that valuable store of intelligence is available to the nation, available to corporates, available to schools, academia, all of that. And I hope that through this channel, people come to know more about the Indian Police Foundation. We even leave a link on the below about the website and various options in which people can participate and assist in creating a safer space, which you have worked, 40 years, sir? From
37 years in the IPS 37 years in the IPS, and
IPS.
after that, yes. No, policing is not just for the police, as you
Yes,
very correctly
yes.
put it. And that was the whole thing. You're just the 2.5 million police officers across India. You cannot have a police population ratio that goes larger and larger, because you have to get the public involved. You have to get the public as involved in their own safety as the police that is actually deployed on the ground. And that is what the Indian Police Foundation strives for, to build up the skills of the police, of course, to engage with the public, and to ensure that the nation gets the policing it deserves.
The last one, sir, for Assam, because home cadre. And it's also now the gateway to the northeast, as we know, the major thrust that is happening with the Prime Minister himself pushing this. For the northeast, for an average Indian, and especially for the corporates who don't know, I mean, there's a lot of people beyond Hornbill, beyond Kaziranga and maybe Guwahati, many people don't even know the Arunachal, so it's completely, unexplored.
Yes.
What's your last, 30 seconds for your advocacy for Assam and for the Northeast, especially for people who are looking to invest and who are looking to, as in setting up, again, one of the greenest regions.
Regions, absolutely.
So what would your...
in terms of workforce, in terms of resources, in terms of potential, and in terms of now support from the state government and the central government, you can't have a better destination. So I would suggest just go there and see what it has to offer. Assam is a wonderful state with huge opportunities. And if the corporates can get the SMEs going over there to support their major industries, the sky's the limit. So go for it.
We'll do that. Thank you very much, sir. It was an amazing conversation.
Wonderful.
Thank you for joining us on Journey of Leaders. If today's conversation resonated with you, take a moment to reflect on the principles we have uncovered and how they might apply to your own journey. Leadership is not about titles or positions. It's about choices, consistency, and the courage to act when it matters the most. The wisdom shared here comes from the lived experience, tested in uncertainty, refined through adversity, and strengthened over time. I am Captain Raghu Raman. Stay with us as we continue to explore the first principles of leadership, one conversation at a time.